Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an event that absolutely shook an empire to its core. A massive, violent uprising that totally reshaped the destiny of India. This is the story of the Great Rebellion of 1857, what many today call India's first war of independence.
So let's kick things off with a question, one that really gets to the heart of what happened here. You think of empires as these huge, powerful things, built on armies and politics, right? But what if a simple rumor could bring the whole thing crashing down?
Well, this was that rumor, a whisper that just spread like wildfire through the barracks of the British East India Company's army. And it was a rumor that struck right at the deepest religious beliefs of both Hindu and Muslim soldiers, the sepoys.
You see, this wasn't just a rumor. It was the spark that lit a powder keg that had, believe it or not, been building up for almost 100 years.
Okay, so let's break this down. The British bring in this new weapon, the Enfield rifle. Now, to load it, a soldier had to literally bite the paper cartridge open. And the rumor flying around that the grease on this cartridge was made from cow and pig fat. Now, you have to understand, for Hindu soldiers, the cow is sacred. For Muslim soldiers, the pig is forbidden. So being forced to put that in your mouth, it was seen as a complete defilement, a direct attack on their faith, coming straight from their own commanders.
Right, and this is the key thing to remember. The cartridges were just the spark. The real fuel for this fire, the gunpowder, had been piling up for decades. Let's get into the long-term causes that made this whole thing basically inevitable.
First up, the political situation. The British East India Company, they were basically playing a game of Monopoly with India. They were systematically taking over kingdoms, ripping up treaties, and just stripping local rulers of all their power. This left a whole lot of very angry, very powerful people in their wake. And to top it all off, they were openly disrespecting the Mughal emperor, who was still a hugely important symbolic figure.
And check this out. They had this one policy that was just incredibly effective and, frankly, devastating. It was called the Doctrine of Lapse. The rule was simple. If an Indian ruler died without a son to inherit the throne, poof, his kingdom was just swallowed up by the British Empire. This wasn't just politics. It felt like an attack on family, on tradition, on legacy itself. And yeah, this is how you create some really powerful enemies, like the legendary warrior queen, Rani Lakshmibai.
All right, now let's talk money, because this is a huge piece of the puzzle. The British economic policies were, to put it bluntly, draining India dry. We're talking about sky-high taxes that were crushing farmers, forcing them into debt. At the exact same time, cheap factory-made stuff from Britain was flooding the market, completely wiping out local weavers and craftsmen. India was basically being turned into a giant farm for raw materials and a marketplace where it was forced to buy back finished British goods. It was a one-way street.
And if all that wasn't enough, you had these deep-seated social and religious fears bubbling up. Now, some of the British reforms, like banning the practice of sati, were, by modern standards, progressive. But back then, they were often seen as a direct attack on Indian tradition. You combine that with Christian missionaries being very active, and you can see how a powerful idea started to spread. The British weren't just here for the land and the money, they were here to change everything, to erase Indian culture and faith.
And here's the ultimate irony. The biggest source of anger was growing right inside the very thing that kept the British in power, their own army. Think about it. The Indian soldiers, the sepoys, they were the backbone of this military, but they were treated like second-class citizens. They got paid less than European soldiers, they had zero chance of getting a real promotion, and were often treated with total contempt. So when those greased cartridges came along, it wasn't just a religious issue, it was the absolute last straw, the final insult they were willing to take.
So, you've got this giant powder keg of political, economic, and social anger just sitting there. And then the spark from the cartridges hits it, and boom! The rebellion just explodes across northern India. And the speed and the sheer violence of it was shocking to everyone.
And just look at how fast everything happened. On March 29th, one soldier, Mangal Pandey, takes a stand. He's executed for it, but he instantly becomes a martyr, a rallying cry. Then, barely a month later, May 10th, the soldiers in the city of Meerut go into open rebellion. They break their friends out of jail and start marching to Delhi, the old imperial capital. And by the very next day, they've captured the city and declared the old Mughal ruler, Bahadur Shah Zafar, the emperor of India and the leader of their rebellion. It was an incredible turn of events.
And this really shows you, this was no small, isolated mutiny.
Look at these places: Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow. This was a massive fire that was spreading across major cities all over the region. It was a huge, widespread challenge to British rule, on a scale they had never ever seen before.
So, who was leading this thing? Well, it wasn't one person or one group. It was this incredible mix of people: deposed kings and queens, angry nobles, and brilliant military leaders. And they were all fighting to get back what had been taken from them.
And here are some of the key players, the faces of this rebellion. You've got figures who are now legends. People like Rani Lakshmi Bai, the amazing warrior queen of Jhansi. You have Nana Sahib and his incredible general Tantia Tope in Kanpur, and Begum Hazrat Mahal, a queen fighting for her son in Lucknow. Every single one of them became a powerful, lasting symbol of resistance. Okay, so despite all the incredible bravery, in the end, the rebellion was crushed. And the British were brutal in how they did it. They had more resources, better organization, but, and this is so important, just because it failed on the battlefield doesn't mean it didn't have a massive, lasting impact. And this is really the key takeaway right here. You have to separate the result from the legacy. The immediate result, yeah, it was a military failure. The British won. But the long-term legacy, wow, it was a total game changer. It absolutely shattered the idea that the British would rule forever. And it planted the very first seeds of a shared Indian identity, a sense that people from different regions were in this together.
The consequences were just huge. I mean, the British East India Company, the corporation that had been running things for 100 years, it was dissolved, gone. India was put directly under the control of the British Queen and government. But even more important than that was the memory of 1857. The story of Hindus and Muslims fighting together, side by side, against one enemy. That story became the bedrock, the foundational myth, for the entire freedom struggle that came next.
So that brings us to the big question, the one historians still debate. Was this really India's first war of independence? Or was it just a bunch of separate rebellions that all happened at once? Soldiers with their issues, princes with theirs. Was it something more? Was this the actual moment a unified nation was born, in the first bloody chapter of a long, long fight for freedom? It's something to think about.